Hey there, welcome back to the Path to Zion podcast, where we are rediscovering the ancient way. Thank you so much for coming back, stopping by the channel for a little bit today, and we are moving into part 4 of looking into Psalm chapter 119. We're going to go through every verse from beginning to end, and we're just going to ask this question according to the lines of this chapter that we read. Are the commandments still good? Specifically, as a question, can we look at the words of Psalm chapter 119? Can we read them? Can we declare them from a clear heart posture place as being true for us today? Are the things that we read regarding Yahweh's commandments, His statutes, His judgments, His Torah instructions, can we join ourselves with the words that David recorded that we can hold in our hands and read in Psalm chapter 119? Can we agree with and declare out of our mouths that we too say these lines that are in this chapter of the book of Psalms? And obviously it's been a week since I did part 3, and per usual, I've seen more sermon titles and I've read some commentaries of just different people's thoughts on theological issues over the last week or so. Facebook posts that I see, is this theme continues to reveal why this type of discussion is necessary and so needed in the understanding we have and theological framework and foundational understanding we have in Christianity as a whole, that people are still talking about how they're so thankful they're, quote, not under the burdensome law anymore that was done away with in Jesus. And of course, specifically for me, more people have warned me to not go back under the law and remove my need for Jesus, quote. And I don't. It's a redundant thought. It's a redundant presentation. Almost all of these sound identical. And when these things come, whether personal or just in a broad viewing of other discussions that believers have ongoing in real life and online both, there's the same common denominator, which is we don't understand Father's statutes, His laws, His commands. We've not understood their function, their identity, and their use for us today here in 2026 as I record this, in my opinion. However, there are many, of course, who are choosing to believe that the written word is valuable over the opinions of men, over popular doctrine, over, well, I know Psalm 119:14 says this, but we know because of Paul or because of Hebrews or because of something else that that's not really true for the believer today. That was good for David, but not for us. And as we keep going through in this series, well, what about chapter 5 or verse 15 then, that most people would make a t-shirt out of, or verse 22, which somebody would make a sermon based upon? Well, who picks and chooses which ones are applicable and which ones aren't for us here in this age that we live in? And so we believe, and we are promoting in this series and hopefully every video and discussion we do, that what we believe must line up with what the Word says. And so we continue this series asking this question with this same theme at play, which is, are the words of Psalm chapter 119 specifically, as we walk through them, are they still true? Are they still good today? And if not, what has changed? Has something changed with these words that David recorded for the most part for our reading, for our learning, for our studying, for our application in our life? Or will we cling to something else that is a replacement idea that now, that was true then, but now it's this? We need to examine, as I'm always saying, what we've inherited, what we believe and why. It's a safe thing to do instead of just picking and choosing what we believe and what we embrace as true today. So I want to challenge us again as we get ready to read these verses, and as we've been doing as a template throughout this series in the first 3 so far, we ask a question, and then we allow verses in Psalm chapter 119 to answer these practical, real-life questions that we should have and we will run into in our lives. Because I want us to be a people who can, from a heart place, again, as I've said, believe in, agree with what we read in the Word. So, Psalm 119, part 4, are the commandments still good today? Are they still what we read about? Are these lines still something we can confide in, put our trust in, and stand upon as rock solid truth? The words of the Creator. Is that still possible for us today? First question, does your innermost place faint and fail for Yahweh's salvation? How do you respond if so, if that is true of you? Verse 81 of Psalm chapter 119 gets us started saying, my soul languishes for your salvation, Yahweh. I wait for your word. Do your physical and mental faculties faint and fail? It's the same word as we just read in the previous verse. For Father's word. Where does your comfort and consolation come from in real life examples and experiences that you find yourself in? Verse 82. My eyes fail with longing for your word, while I say, when will you comfort me? Okay, that's okay to ask Yahweh relational questions as a father. When will you bring me comfort? Where does my help come from? Like, Father, where are you? I need you. I'm in distress. I'm in need of your deliverance, of your safety, of your rescue, of your help. That's okay to do as a child of the Most High. I hope we find that okay to do. When times are hard, dry, and wearisome, what is our response? Okay? When times are hard, how do we respond? Well, here's an idea, verse 83 for us to consider. Though I have become like a wineskin in the smoke, I do not forget your statutes. My son and I, when we went through this part 4 and studied it out, looked at some word meanings, that sort of thing. This is one we landed on and talked about for a while, which is, of course, in historical understanding of aging wineskins and drying wineskins, that they were, of course, something that could be, they had to be dried, but you could dry them too much and they become brittle and withered up and taut and can't really accomplish what they were intended to. And so, obviously, David is leaning towards some imagery here of, although I've become like a wineskin in the smoke, okay? Nevertheless, I do not forget your statutes. And here's what he and I talked about. And we've highlighted this, and I believe in every part thus far in this series. We have got to understand that, biblically speaking, hard times, times of struggle, times of fear, the writers of the Word, friend, and especially throughout the Psalms, they find solace and comfort in remembering Yahweh's commandments. We see this. We've seen this as a theme in this series. It continues to float to the surface every time I sit down and I put these together. There was an understanding that Yahweh's commandments, that are, of course, perfect in reviving the soul, that's not coincidence, were what righteous men ran to find comfort, peace, salvation, confidence, identity. I dwell on your statutes. I meditate on your precepts at midnight. I believe that was part 3 we read last time. This would be good for us to get through our minds in a new way to kind of navigate tough times in life, that maybe I would just say, maybe we just need to get back to what the Word says we should do in these moments. Do you ever cry out for Yahweh's perfect justice to be set in place? I hope we do. I think that's something we could all rightly understand. Father's justice, his perfect response to things on this earth that are against his ways, that are against what his heart desires. Verse 84, how many are the days of your servant? When will you execute judgment on those who persecute me. Along the same lines, we see a standard of measure. Do you live according to the Father's righteous judgments? Is that our goal, is to not look at what Christian culture or pop culture or the church we attend or any other standard of living morality, national cultural morality? No, that's sure not our mark that we're aiming for. So what do we do then? What do we base our lives upon in literal day-to-day living for our households, for ourselves, and for anyone else, as we talked about in the righteous judgment standard of measure discussion about judging other people, like how the scripture doesn't just say, and Yeshua did not just say, don't judge people. He said, judge according to what? We've talked about this enough. Righteous judgments, a perfect standard of measure, which we believe are the commandments of Yahweh. So, do we live according to Father's righteous judgments? Verse 85, the arrogant have dug pits for me, people who are not in accord with your Torah. Now, this is what we've talked about, how throughout this Psalm 119 examination, we've seen a lot of Camp A, Camp B, Camp A, Camp B. This division, this distinction is always in place. This is what Yahweh's people do. This is what people who are not Yahweh's covenant people behave. This is what they do. There's always a distinction. Those who yield themselves to the commandments of the Creator are His set-apart people. Okay? Do you stand upon the commandments of the Creator? When the arrogant bring persecution, do you cry out, not just for justice alone, but also equally for help as well? Verse 86, all of your commandments, Yahweh, are faithful. They have persecuted me with a lie. Help me! Exclamation point. If we're not experiencing this now, many of us probably will in the future. So these are good things for us to get ingrained into our heart and our mind about how we respond rightly to literal persecution. Not people slandering me and calling me names and telling me I'm an ignorant, unlearned person who doesn't really believe the Bible. That's like not even kindergarten level here. We're talking about like David's experience of people literally pursuing him physically for his life, okay? I'm not saying it's not all in the same basic sphere of persecution, but there are levels, we could say at least, right? Sometimes the lying words of those who oppose the righteous standards may be hard to endure. Some of us know this in small measure. Again, we're being fair. We're not invoking major persecution. Nobody's knocking down my door trying to get to me and my family today. I'm not trying to lead anyone to believe that. But what do we do when those who oppose the righteous standards that we call others to, Yahweh's standards, not ours? What do we do? Do we give in? Do we quit? Do we retreat? What do we do? Well, let's just look to the Word. Verse 87 of Psalm 119 says, they almost destroyed me on earth, but as for me, I did not abandon your precepts. So again, the response is, the lies are coming, the persecution is coming, those who pursue me are encroaching upon me. I'm not turning away, Father, from your precepts. I'm not abandoning your commandments. Nonetheless, this has been a consistent theme throughout this study that we've done here. Do you ever need revived? I think it was part 3. We just repeated that over and over again. If so, what is your motivation to be revived? Verse 88, revive me according to your faithfulness, so that I may keep the testimony of your mouth. So here, David is saying he's in need of being revived. He's crying out to be revived to the Most High. And he concludes it with, why though? So that I may keep the testimony of your mouth, so that I may respond in obedience to what you are calling me to do and who you are calling me to be. The purpose of being revived, to fulfill our purpose, which, friend, like biblically defined properly, that is sanctification. We then are becoming the tool, if you will, just to kind of give us a little bit of imagery here, metaphor. We're becoming the tool, we're becoming the individual representative of the Father. We're becoming his literal handiwork, and we are fulfilling why we are in Him, redeemed by Him, restored by Him, saved, delivered, rescued. That's why we are in the Son, is to begin to walk looking like the Son, who was, of course, the suffering servant, obedient unto the end, and to the utmost, both. So our motivation is so that we may keep the testimony of your mouth, Yahweh. Are you settled in Father's perfect ways and acts? Verse 89. Forever, Yahweh, your word stands in heaven. 90. Your faithfulness continues throughout generations. You established the earth and it stands. He's reiterating that he agrees with, Father, your ways are what? They're higher than mine. They're greater. They're loftier. You are far above me, and I'm okay with that. Verse 91, they stand this day, what? His acts, what he's done, his faithfulness throughout all generations. They stand to this day by your ordinances, for all things are your servants. It's a humble declaration of, Father, you are seated over it all. The earth is absolutely your footstool, just like your word says. Do you see the Torah as a delight or a burden that no man can bear? Verse 92, if your Torah had not been my delight, then I would have perished in my misery. Here we are again. Torah, a delight, friend, a broad space, a place of liberty that we read in the last installment as well. I find liberty here. I find a wide open space, Father. I find freedom. Why? Because the confines of the Father's commandments provide us safety, provision, a dwelling place. That's why there's always this mountain and hiding place and covering and safety and rock of refuge and all this type of verbiage. This is a good, safe place, a broad place for us to dwell. And that is why the Torah from the mouth of David was a delight to him. It was part of the entirety of living for the Creator. And David understood that and wrote all these things down for us to remember. And again, ask ourselves, are these things still true today? Are these commandments, is this Torah still? Can you say that, friend? That's all I'm saying. We're being redundant on purpose in this series. Can you read the beginning of verse 92 and say, Father, if your Torah had not been my delight, I would have perished in my misery? It's a valid question, friend. Can we agree with these words? Do you recall and remember Father's commandments and find revival? Verse 93, I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have revived me. Everybody wants revival in this hour. I talked very briefly. I haven't revisited. I went to the tent revival a week ago, and there was so much noise and commotion. There was so much yelling and screaming and noise and blaring music. I sound like an old lady. People on the ground shaking and convulsing all around and crying out for, quote, Holy Spirit fire. I'm just saying, by comparison, this says, I will never forget your precepts, for by them you, Yahweh, have revived me. Put these side by side and let's just let the word be true and everything else be make-believe, experiential, encounter-based stuff that has been a replacement of what our word speaks of. Moving on. Do you have the same confidence that David had as he sought Yahweh's ways? Verse 94, I am yours. Save me, for I have sought your precepts. Again, he's making this connection. Father, I'm just reminding you, I've sought your commandments. I've lived according to your precepts. I've set my position firmly in what you say are righteous judgments, Father. Therefore, save me. Like I would like to say, David's saying, I'm save worthy. I'm worth saving, Father, because I love your precepts. I meditate on them. I have sought them out. I love your commandments, Yahweh. Okay? Here we see yet again deliverance and safety intimately connected with Yahweh's law and testimonies. Do we see the law and testimonies of the Most High as capable of delivering us from the wicked one? We know that that's what happened with Yeshua in the encounter when he's taken up and looking over the whole city and all those things. He quotes the Torah and the prophets and the Psalms. He's quoting the Old Testament, friend. We know what happened. Victorious in every crack and crevice of that situation, right? David said this in verse 95, "The wicked wait for me to destroy me. I will diligently consider your testimonies." Again, this natural circumstance, and David responds with talking about testimonies again and commandments and precepts and statutes. Friend, all I'm saying is we've missed something. We have not been trained to respond in such a manner. Have you? I have not been. I've been told pray harder. And I'm not saying I'm against prayer. I've been told fast more. I'm not saying anything bad against fasting. Run off the devil kicking and screaming by yelling that he needs to get out of here. That one I would question, but you know what I'm saying? What does the word say is what we could say a biblical pattern, a scriptural pattern of how a righteous man responds in real life situations. Have you ever been told that the Torah commandments of Yahweh are too religious, they're too confining, and they're just living in according to legalism? I have. Will we agree with the word, or will we set our agreement with what these accusations say? Verse 96 tells us this, "I have seen a limit to all perfection. Your commandment is exceedingly broad." Here we are again. There's liberty here. There's freedom here. As the word says, there's no way around it. It is a wide open space, friend. Your commandments, Yahweh, are exceedingly broad. Okay? Our beliefs, our foundational doctrines must agree with the word, friend, and not popular opinion. Again, we read and we ask, can we agree with David's declaration as we move to verse 97? "How I love your Torah!" exclamation point. "It is my meditation all day long." Can we say that? Can we say that? If I walked into a Baptist church in my area at the next Sunday morning church service, and I asked this question in front of everybody, and I said, can you agree with Psalm 119, verse 97, and say, "How I love your Torah! It is my meditation all day long"? I don't think there would be much agreement with that if people were honest. And while I'm saying in this study, in this discussion, is why not? What has happened to cause us to have such a bad taste in our mouth when people say, when I present, that the Torah is worth our meditating upon and worth our love if we want to be pleasing in the eyes of the Creator? Should the Torah be something that a believer in Messiah today should meditate on all day? Looking back at what we just read, we have to ask that question. If it is, what is the result? Next, we read of just one. This is verse 98. "Your commandments make me wiser than my enemies, for they are ever mine." Okay? So David's saying, I love your Torah. It's my meditation all day long. And because of this, your commandments have made me wise. Don't we all would want to be wise, right? I think everybody in a room of 10,000 people would say, hey, who wants to be wise in here? Everybody would raise their hand. Well, according to the word, your commandments make me wiser than my enemies. Do we believe that today? In verse 99, we read of another result of meditating on the commandments, as it says, I have more insight than all of my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. Are we getting the point yet? Or are we a little slow? Probably the latter. I know I was for most of my life. Do we need even more reason to agree with Father's commandments? If we do, we read verse 100. I understand more than those who are old because I have complied with your precepts. And so now we have to just ask, well, is he just an arrogant guy? And I never really read it through this angle before, this lens of consideration. Was he just really arrogant and prideful? We can think that, or we can say, well, maybe he was just on to something. Because what? David, and people have said this throughout my whole Christian life, David was a man after God's own heart, right? Okay, that's a pretty good place to be. That's a pretty good identifier, I would think. And so this same individual, and people say, well, he was a sinner too. Yes, of course. So do we use the error of fallen men before us to justify our own horrible behavior? Because, look at Moses and look at Noah and look at David. They weren't perfect. No, nor are they my goal. My goal and aim, as we talked about in the Sin series, my aim is Yeshua, the Son, who chose to willingly lay aside his own will to perfectly please the Father, and was the personification of all of these things we're reading here in Psalm chapter 119. So we have to ask this question: do we really agree with Father's commandments? I hope that we do as we move through these and continue to read. Do we allow Father's commandments to define what is good and what is evil? Right now there's a huge gray area right down the line of all these things anymore. Good and evil. I mean, we're living in the prophesied age of calling evil good and good evil. Verse 101 says, I have restrained my feet from every evil way so that I may keep your word. Friend, we have to even know what evil is. We have to know what good is. That's a whole other issue. But until we get outside of our own thinking and just arrogance, really, to believe, well, of course I know what's good. Of course I know what's evil. We need to really make sure we're setting those parameters according to what the Word says and Father's definition of those things. And until we know that, which we're still forever learning what that even is, categorically speaking, we need to be careful and cautious that we just don't brand something good or evil based on our own limited and natural, often, intellect, okay? Father's righteous judgments. Do we love and treasure them today? Verse 102 and 103. I have not turned away from your judgments, for you yourself have taught me. How sweet are your words to my taste. Yes, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Okay, here we are again. Judgments, testimonies, statutes, law. Sweeter than honey. I love them. I meditate on them. I think on them. They bring me delight. They bring me safety. Friend, this is what we need to hear. This is what Christianity, in my opinion, needs to get through their minds and through their theological foundations and shake out anything that is not in agreement with what we're reading here in Psalm chapter 119. As we get to what will be our last question in this installment here, we ask, how do you gain understanding? How do any one of us gain understanding and add it to our lives? What is our standard to identify what is falsehood? What standard do we even set up against to even discern what is true and what is a lie? Let's read 104 to conclude today. From your precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. Friend, in conclusion, I have a little bit more to read here when we're done. But friend, this darkness that overshadows majority thinking right now has got to be broken off. People right now are so deceived and delusional by seeing something and carnally assessing it without testing the spirits, without testing it according to the Word, without discerning good and evil. Why? But why? Why is that the problem? Because we don't gain understanding from Father's precepts. Because a belief system religion, Christianity as a whole, has disregarded, cast aside, removed Yahweh's Torah. They've removed his commandments in the full sense, okay? They'd say the 10, but not really, kind of the 9. Because those precepts, because those laws, because those statutes have been removed, mankind, professing believers now, have lost the ability, lost the capability of identifying what is false and what is true. And so when that is off at the foundational level, we don't have understanding. We don't hate every false way according to Yahweh. And we find ourselves hating all these other things down here that have nothing to do with the core issues. So from your precepts, I get understanding. And therefore, because I get understanding from your precepts, Yahweh, I hate every false way that's defined therein. And that is our baseline for how we live and how we discern and assess everything that we see that comes across our life. So as we conclude today, again, we have seen that what was recorded for all generations to read and to remember was imperative for those who want to walk pleasing to the Most High today in 2026. There is absolutely no biblical reason to abandon the commandments and to abandon the statutes of the Most High today. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. Now, the world, I understand, they would cast that aside and they want to be ungoverned, lawless ones. Of course, I get that. But if you call yourself a believer, a covenantal member of the family of the Most High, of Yahweh himself, well, friend, there's a way for us to live that Psalm 119 is redundantly driving home for anyone who would listen to what it's telling us. Father's wonderfully perfect, righteous judgments, friend, are the things we have got to learn, got to establish, and have to rightly implement into our lives. As we've read and discussed in this here, part 4, Father's commandments are broad, friend. His Torah, his law, his statutes are wide. They are broad. They bring deliverance. Just this one we've read, this part 4 here. They teach us. They train us. They are to be our delight. They position us to be rescued from our enemies. They, the commandments, are faithful, to hit a few highlights of what we've read in the last few minutes. So this time around, we all have to personally answer the same questions. Will we reorder our view of the commandments, of the statutes of the Creator? Will we humble ourselves and will we admit that we've all inherited a very false view of Father's Torah, a negative light and vantage point? Absolutely, if we're honest. Will we make the necessary changes because of that in our hearts now, in our hearts first? To agree with the word, to agree with the words of David in these lines of Psalm 119, so that we can get to a place where we can personally declare these lines from a heart place. We have more opportunities ahead to do so. I think we've got around 70 verses still to go here in this discussion of asking the question, are the commandments of the Creator that we read about in Psalm chapter 119, are they still good today? Are they still good for the believer in Messiah today? We've got to answer these questions. I hope you're thinking this through as we move through this discussion in this series. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Path to Zion podcast. You can find us all over the place, wherever you listen to audio. You can watch videos, of course, here on YouTube. Reach out to us anytime, 24/7 at pathtozionpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Amen.